All right, you guys, so there's a big buzz on intermittent fasting, and I've made videos about how it's important to eat breakfast for the general public, which is 99% of the people out there, not the 1% or so who are interested in bodybuilding and so forth. Um, Two ways to stimulate autophagy is through diet and exercise. I'm going to focus on diet in this video, okay? Now, we know that fasting obviously induces autophagy, but I consider this a forced approach. You're forcing the issue, okay? Whereas when we feast on nutrient-dense foods, because if you look at the bottom of this video, I'll have it in the description, all of the studies and all of the foods that actually induce autophagy. So essentially, it's feast on calories with the least calories. There's a correlation with nutrient-dense foods being calorie dilute, okay? I've talked about that in a previous video about the stretch receptors in the stomach, how you can fill your stomach with fruit and vegetables, and it's only like 400 calories versus you only fill a fraction of your stomach with oil or chicken, and it's still 400 calories. And you're not stimulating the stretch receptors, and there's a difference in the satiety signal when it comes from high protein versus high fiber. So autophagy is stimulated both by fasting and when we feast on nutrient-dense foods. So when we fast, it's forced. When we feast, it's facilitated. So phytochemicals stimulate autophagy, and there are several of them out there. G-bombs. That's a simple way to know which foods stimulate autophagy. This is Dr. Furman's nutrient-dense concept. This stands for greens, beans, onions, mushrooms, berries, seeds. Now, when we say onions, we also include garlic in there because that induces autophagy. There are studies that show that beans actually induce autophagy in many ways. Directly, the beans induce it, but they also induce it because they have resistant starch. And fiber. Beans also have fiber, which I'm going to get to in a second. Mushrooms induce autophagy. Berries induce autophagy, and there was a study that found that walnuts induce autophagy, and I'm sure there are many others. Flax seeds more than likely induce it because they have omega-3 fats, and omega-3s have been shown to induce autophagy. So fiber is amazing, and me and Dr. Angie made 2 collaboration videos about this. Essentially, autophagy is induced through fiber by 2 ways. Number one, in the colon, the resistant starch gets to the colon, it stimulates short-chain fatty acid production such as butyrate and propionate and acetate, and those fat, particularly butyrate, induces autophagy. And fiber is a caloric restriction mimetic because when we consume it in our body, we don't absorb all of the calories. So it mimics caloric restriction, but it actually ends up being caloric restriction. It's probably the only food or the only substance that I know does that. It's pretty remarkable. Obviously, green tea induces autophagy. Coffee induces autophagy, but that's caffeine independent. And the researchers speculate polyphenols were the main reason why autophagy was induced, which kind of comes back to my phytochemicals. So essentially, guys, autophagy, the number one thing that really is the underlying factor with whether we fast or feast on nutrient-dense foods is caloric restriction. Both of these methods induce it, okay? We have options, but as you know, I prefer it if, and just so you know, we can be in autophagy eating. You've never heard that before. And see that a lot of the bro science out there will tell you we need an intermittent fast to get into autophagy. That's not true. What about accumulated autophagy, right? Being in a caloric deficit or being calorically restricted over a long period of time, okay? Autophagy happens all the time. It's basal autophagy. It's like housekeeping, okay? And so think of it this way. For people who fast, I question the relevance of doing that on a daily basis. I look at it this way, and Dr. Panda talked about this in the interview with Dr. Rhonda Patrick, talked about how every day the body's in basal autophagy. In other words, it's kind of like a rug, right? And you vacuum the rug maybe, couple days a week or, perhaps daily. Whereas steam cleaning the rug, we do that once or twice a year. Well, when we fast, right, every day, it's like steam cleaning a rug every day. Is it going to make any difference? No. Does it need to be done? Not necessarily. But by and large, we don't need to, so to speak, we don't need to steam clean the rug every day, okay? So that's something to be aware of. So I am a fan of intermittent fasting. I do it from time to time, and sometimes I'll do a longer fast. But to do it every day, again, it's forcing the issue versus facilitating the issue, okay? When we eat nutrient dense, it makes autophagic sense, okay? When we don't eat nutrient dense, when we eat empty calories, then we're kind of left to fast and starve ourselves to accomplish really something that may not be as optimal as well. Because, you know, when we eat nutrient dense foods, it's not just autophagy we're stimulating many other therapeutic pathways in the body, okay? So once again, be wary of this fasting craze and the autophagy connection and how that's new smoke or new snake oil, okay? You come to me for the science. So with that, make sure you give this video a thumbs up, especially because I just told you that you can eat and induce autophagy over the long term, and it's been shown. Also in the longest lived population, one of the blue zones, Okinawan population, they eat nutrient dense. They have higher levels of DHEAS, which is one of the one of the hormones that tends to rise when we fast, right? Well, guess what? Dr. Greger talks about this, and I'm going to let him finish it, that a plant-based diet actually increases this hormone, DHEAS. And so it's almost like a fasting mimetic. It mimics fasting without actually fasting. Wow. Choice is yours. Information's here, information's there. I hope you choose this information because I'm giving you the pro science, not the bro science. So with that, thank you guys for watching and enjoy what Dr. Greger has to say on this. Tune in next time.
In fact, one of the ways caloric restriction appears to extend the lifespan of many animals may be the upregulation of DHEA. Short-term impact of a lacto-vegetarian diet. So after just 5 days on an egg-free vegetarian diet, blood levels of DHEA rose about 20% compared to the meaty diets. And it's interesting why. It wasn't necessarily because they were making more, producing more of it, but instead they were losing less. The bodies of those eating vegetarian appear to hold on to it, which is normally something you only see in fasting. But these were all isocaloric diets, meaning same calories in both diets. So by eating vegetarian, one may be able to mimic the effects of caloric restriction, but without walking around starving all the time.